The alarm pierced through Sarah's sleep at 6:30 a.m., dragging her from what felt like 5 minutes of rest rather than 7 hours. She lay still, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on her chest like a stone. Her body ached in places that shouldn't ache at 35. Her lower back, her shoulders, even her jaw from grinding her teeth through another restless night. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection told the story her fitness tracker couldn't capture. Dark circles had taken permanent residence under her eyes, and her skin looked dull, despite the expensive serums cluttering her medicine cabinet. She'd gained 15 pounds over the past 2 years, despite trying every diet that promised quick results. The keto phase, the intermittent fasting experiment, the brutal 5 a.m. CrossFit sessions that left her too tired to function properly at work. Sarah worked as a marketing director for a tech startup in downtown Seattle, where 14-hour days were badges of honor, and lunch meant scarfing down a protein bar between Zoom calls. Her apartment reflected her lifestyle. Takeout containers stacked in the sink, a treadmill doubling as a clothing rack, and supplements scattered across her kitchen counter like talismans against her declining energy. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in November when she met Hiroshi. He'd transferred from the Tokyo office to lead their international partnerships, and Sarah noticed him immediately. Not because he was particularly tall or commanding, but because of his strange serenity. While everyone else clutched oversized coffee cups like lifelines, Hiroshi carried a small thermos and seemed genuinely alert during the 8 a.m. meetings that left Sarah struggling to focus. During lunch, she watched him unwrap a simple bento box with the kind of attention she reserved for important presentations. He ate slowly, methodically, pausing between bites in a way that seemed almost meditative. When their eyes met across the break room, he smiled and gestured to the empty chair beside him. "You look tired," he said gently, his English careful but clear. "American office life is intense." Sarah laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. "I've been tired for about 3 years straight. I keep thinking I need better willpower, or a stricter routine, or maybe just more coffee." Hiroshi shook his head. "In Japan we have a saying, 'The nail that sticks out gets hammered down.' But this is about environments, not effort. Your environment trains your body to be tired." He pulled out a small ceramic bowl from his bento box, plain white, no bigger than his cupped hands. "My grandmother gave this to me when I moved to America. She said it would keep me healthy when everything else felt chaos." He held it up to the light. "1/3 cup of rice every meal, not because I count calories, but because the bowl decides for me." Sarah stared at the simple bowl, remembering her own grandmother's warnings about eating too fast, sleeping too little. When had she stopped listening to that wisdom and started chasing trends instead? That evening, Sarah found herself researching Japanese longevity studies until 2 a.m., her laptop screen casting blue light across her face in the familiar ritual of late-night scrolling. But something felt different this time. Instead of looking for another quick fix, she was curious about the rhythm Hiroshi embodied, the calm that seemed to emanate from his daily habits rather than his willpower. She thought about the small bowl as she finally closed her laptop, wondering what other invisible habits might be hiding in plain sight. The next morning, Sarah watched Hiroshi during their team meeting with new eyes. While everyone else fidgeted with their phones during the presentation, he sat with his back straight but relaxed, his breathing slow and even. When their colleague James made a joke about needing IV coffee, Hiroshi simply smiled and took a small sip from his thermos. After the meeting, Sarah approached him by the elevators. "That bowl you showed me yesterday, is that really all there is to it? Just eating from something smaller?" Hiroshi considered her question as they rode down to the lobby. "The bowl is one habit, but habits live in systems. In Tokyo, my apartment had tatami mats. Every morning, I folded my futon and put it away. This teaches the body that sleep has a beginning and an end, not just endless tiredness." Sarah thought about her own bedroom, blackout curtains that kept her in artificial darkness, a mattress so soft she often woke up feeling like she was sinking, clothes scattered across every surface. I don't have tatami mats or a futon. The principle is the same, Hiroshi said, as they stepped into the Seattle drizzle. Your nervous system needs signals, morning ritual, evening ritual, boundaries between work time and body time. He paused, studying her face. When do you stop working? When I fall asleep at my laptop, Sarah admitted, then laughed at how pathetic it sounded. That evening, Sarah decided to experiment. She put her phone in the kitchen at 9 p.m. and went to bed an hour earlier than usual. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced with tomorrow's deadlines, replaying the day's emails, planning responses to problems that might never materialize. She lay there feeling guilty about wasting time in bed when she could be productive. By Thursday, her curiosity had overcome her skepticism. She visited a Japanese home goods store in the International District, feeling slightly ridiculous as she examined rice bowls and teacups. The elderly shop owner, Mrs. Tanaka, noticed her confusion. "First time buying Japanese dinnerware?" she asked kindly. "I'm trying to eat more mindfully, I guess." A co-worker suggested using smaller portions. Mrs. Tanaka nodded knowingly. Portion control is not about restriction. It's about awareness. In Japan we say hara-hachi-bu, eat until you are 80% full, but this requires listening to your body, not fighting it. She guided Sarah to a set of simple white bowls, each one similar to Hiroshi's. These are sized for proper portions, but more important, when you eat, just eat. No phone, no computer, no television. Let your stomach talk to your brain. Sarah bought the bowl along with a matching teacup, feeling both hopeful and skeptical. That night, she measured out 1/3 cup of rice and ate it slowly from the small bowl, paying attention to each bite. To her surprise, she felt satisfied. Not stuffed, not hungry, but pleasantly content in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Her friend Jessica called while Sarah was washing the dishes by hand, another small ritual she'd decided to try. "You've been weird lately," Jessica said without preamble. "Emma said you left happy hour early yesterday, and now you're not answering texts after 9 p.m. Are you seeing someone?" Sarah dried the bowl carefully, running her fingers over its smooth surface. "I'm trying to sleep better and eat more mindfully." "Since when do you care about mindful eating? Just do keto again. You lost like 10 pounds last time." "And gained back 15, Sarah reminded her. "I'm tired of fighting my body all the time." "Ooh, God, you sound like a wellness influencer now," Jessica laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Next, you'll be telling me about the benefits of meditation or some shit." After hanging up, Sarah sat with her tea in the quiet apartment. For the first time in months, her mind felt spacious. Not empty, but less cluttered. She realized she'd been holding her breath for years without knowing it. 3 weeks into her new routine, Sarah noticed the first real change during her monthly check-in with Dr. Martinez. She'd been dreading the appointment, expecting the usual lecture about stress eating and exercise goals, but something felt different as she sat in the waiting room. Instead of scrolling through her phone in the anxious trance she'd perfected, she found herself simply sitting, watching other patients rush in, looking exactly like she used to feel. "Your blood pressure is down 10 points, Dr. Martinez said, studying the numbers with surprise. "Are you taking medication I don't know about?" "Just sleeping an hour more and eating from smaller plates," Sarah said, feeling slightly embarrassed by how simple it sounded. Dr. Martinez looked skeptical. "That's it? No new workout routine? Diet changes?" Sarah thought about trying to explain the evening ritual she'd developed. Phone in the kitchen at 9 p.m., tea from the small cup while sitting at her cleared table, the way she now folded her clothes each night instead of leaving them in piles. How could she tell her doctor that these tiny habits made her feel more rested than years of supplements and sleep aids? "I'm just fighting my body less," she finally said. At work, the changes were becoming visible to others. During Thursday's project review, James made his usual joke about needing an IV drip of espresso, then looked at Sarah expectantly. But instead of joining the familiar chorus of exhaustion complaints, she simply smiled and continued taking notes. "You're not participating in our suffering Olympics today," James said with mock hurt. "What's your secret?" "New antidepressants." Before Sarah could answer, Hiroshi spoke up quietly. "Sometimes the secret is not having secrets, just rhythm." James rolled his eyes. "Easy for you to say, man. Some of us have American metabolisms." Sarah felt a flicker of her old defensive patterns, the need to laugh along, to minimize any change that might seem too healthy or different. But something in Hiroshi's calm gaze steadied her. "I've just been sleeping more," she said. "Turns out my grandmother was right about bedtimes." The comment earned a few chuckles, and the meeting moved on, but Sarah caught Hiroshi's approving nod. That evening she called her grandmother in Portland for the first time in months. "You sound different, honey," Grandma Rose said after they'd covered the usual topics. "Less frantic. I've been thinking about some of the things you used to tell me, about eating slowly, going to bed on time." "Oh, you mean back when you thought I was an old-fashioned pain in the rear?" Rose laughed warmly. "What changed your mind?" Sarah looked down at the small bowl in her hands, now a familiar weight after 3 weeks of mindful dinners. "I met someone who reminded me that maybe the old ways weren't so old-fashioned after all. Sometimes the newest thing is the oldest thing," Rose said. "I learned that from your great-grandmother, who probably learned it from hers. Funny how we keep having to rediscover what our bodies already know." After the call, Sarah sat with her tea and noticed something that would have seemed impossible a month ago. She was looking forward to sleep, not as an escape from exhaustion, but as a natural completion to her day. The anticipation felt foreign, but deeply satisfying, like remembering a language she'd spoken as a child. Her phone buzzed with texts from the group chat about weekend plans, but for once she didn't feel the familiar anxiety about missing out. Instead, she felt curious about what Saturday morning would feel like if she went to bed before midnight on Friday. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar, and stay with us for the next chapters. 2 months into her new rhythm, Sarah faced her first real test. The company landed a major client that required a presentation in New York, with a deadline that meant working until 2 a.m. for 3 consecutive nights. The old Sarah would have survived on energy drinks and adrenaline, crashing afterward into a weekend of Netflix and takeout guilt. But now, standing in her kitchen at 11 p.m. on the second night, holding her ceramic teacup, she felt the familiar crossroads of her old life and new habits. Her laptop glowed accusingly from the dining table, slides half finished. James had already sent 17 messages to the team chat about grinding through this together. Hiroshi appeared in the kitchen, having stayed late to help with the project. "You look conflicted," he observed, filling his own water bottle from the filter. "I don't know how to do this anymore," Sarah admitted. "Before I would just push through, ignore my body, drink coffee until my hands shook. But now," she gestured helplessly at the teacup, "this feels important somehow. But so does the deadline. In Japan, we have another saying, Nanakorobi yaoki, fall 7 times, stand 8. But standing doesn't mean you never fell." Hiroshi leaned against the counter, his voice gentle. "What if you honor the deadline and the tea? Work in intervals with real breaks. Your brain will be sharper." Sarah tried his approach, working for 90 minutes, then making tea and sitting quietly for 10 minutes before returning to her laptop. To her surprise, the presentation came together more smoothly than any all-nighter she'd ever pulled. Her ideas felt clearer, her writing more focused. At 1 a.m., instead of pushing until dawn, she saved her work and went to bed. James sent a sarcastic text about some people having it easy, but Sarah turned off her phone without responding. The presentation was a success. More importantly, Sarah realized something had fundamentally shifted in how she related to work pressure. Instead of seeing deadlines as emergencies that required abandoning all self-care, She'd learned to work with her energy rather than against it. Dr. Martinez confirmed what Sarah already felt during her 3-month follow-up. "Your cortisol levels are in normal range for the first time in 2 years," she said, reviewing the blood work. "Your inflammatory markers are down significantly. What exactly have you been doing?" Sarah tried to explain the constellation of small changes. The bowl, the bedtime ritual, the tea breaks, the hour of buffer time she'd built around sleep. Dr. Martinez listened with the skepticism of someone trained to prescribe solutions rather than trust the body's wisdom. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it," she finally said. "Your metabolic markers look like someone 10 years younger." Walking home that evening, Sarah called her grandmother again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about rediscovering what our bodies already know," Sarah said as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. "I think I spent years trying to hack my biology instead of listening to it." "Your generation wants to optimize everything," Rose said with amusement. "But some things can't be optimized, only honored." That night, as Sarah folded her clothes and prepared her small bowl for tomorrow's breakfast, she realized the changes weren't just physical. Something deeper had shifted in her relationship with herself. Less fighting, more cooperation. Less forcing, more flowing. The ceramic bowl sat on her counter, ready for morning, carrying the accumulated wisdom of dozens of mindful meals. Such a simple object, yet it had become the anchor for a completely different way of living. Would you rather force yourself with willpower, or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you, and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. 6 months after meeting Hiroshi, Sarah sat in her apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, holding the ceramic bowl that had become the center of her transformed routine. Sunlight streamed through windows she now opened each morning, instead of keeping sealed behind blackout curtains. The space felt different, not just cleaner, but more intentional. The revelation had come gradually, then all at once. She wasn't just eating differently or sleeping better. She was living inside a completely different relationship with her own body and time. The bowl in her hands represented something much larger than portion control. It was about trust. For years, she'd approached her health like a hostile takeover of her own biology. Every diet was a battle plan, every workout a punishment for previous failures. She'd treated her appetite as an enemy to defeat, her tiredness as weakness to overcome, her natural rhythms as inconvenient obstacles to productivity. The Japanese habits Hiroshi had introduced weren't really about discipline at all. They were about designing an environment where the healthy choice became the natural choice. The small bowl made overeating nearly impossible without making her feel restricted. The evening tea ritual created a natural transition into rest without requiring iron willpower to stop working. "I think I've been fighting myself for decades without realizing it," she told Hiroshi during their weekly walk around Green Lake, a routine that had emerged naturally from their friendship. "American culture teaches that bodies are machines to be optimized," he replied, watching a great blue heron stand motionless in the shallows. "Japanese culture teaches that bodies are gardens to be tended, very different approaches." Sarah thought about her grandmother again, how Rose had seemed to age gracefully without ever talking about anti-aging strategies or biohacking. She'd simply lived according to rhythms that honored both productivity and rest, both community and solitude. That evening, Sarah video called Rose to share her realization. "I think I finally understand what you meant about rediscovering what our bodies already know," Sarah said, holding up the ceramic bowl. "This little thing taught me that I don't need to control my appetite. I need to listen to it." Rose smiled from the screen, her eyes crinkling with the kind of contentment Sarah had been chasing through supplements and fitness trackers. "Your great-grandmother used to say that wisdom isn't about learning new things. It's about remembering what you forgot you knew." "I forgot that being tired isn't a moral failure," Sarah said. "I forgot that hunger and satisfaction are information." not problems to solve. I forgot that my body is trying to help me, not sabotage me. The transformation felt profound, but also incredibly simple. Sarah's weight had stabilized 15 pounds lower than her highest point, but more importantly, she'd stopped weighing herself obsessively. Her energy remained steady throughout the day, instead of spiking and crashing. Sleep felt restorative rather than just a pause between periods of exhaustion. Dr. Martinez had stopped asking what medications she might be taking and started asking about her sleep schedule and meal timing instead. James at work had gradually stopped making jokes about her health kick and started asking genuine questions about how she managed stress. Even Jessica, initially skeptical of Sarah's changes, had begun texting photos of her own attempts at mindful eating. But the deepest change was internal. Sarah realized she'd spent years treating self-care like a luxury she had to earn through suffering, rather than understanding it as the foundation that made everything else possible. The ceramic bowl had taught her that true discipline wasn't about forcing herself into unsustainable behaviors. It was about creating sustainable systems. As she prepared for sleep that Sunday night, following the ritual that now felt as natural as breathing, Sarah understood that she hadn't just changed her habits, she'd changed her entire philosophy about what it meant to live well in a modern world that seemed designed to exhaust the human nervous system. The bowl sat clean and ready on her counter, holding space for tomorrow's nourishment and the continued practice of treating her body as a trusted ally rather than a conquered territory. 3 years later, Sarah stood in her kitchen preparing breakfast in the same ceramic bowl, but everything around it had evolved. The apartment reflected the deeper changes. Plants thrived on windowsills she now opened to natural light each morning. A small meditation cushion sat folded in the corner, and her refrigerator held simple, whole foods rather than the collection of supplements and meal replacement shakes that once dominated her nutrition approach. The transformation hadn't been linear. There had been weeks when work deadlines disrupted her sleep schedule, periods when travel made her evening ritual impossible, moments when she'd reverted to stress eating or endless scrolling. But each time, the bowl called her back. Not through guilt or rigid rules, but through the gentle memory of how good it felt to live in harmony with her natural rhythms. Dr. Martinez had become genuinely curious about what she called the Sarah phenomenon, asking detailed questions about sleep hygiene and meal timing that she now shared with other patients struggling with metabolic issues and chronic fatigue. "You've become my poster child for lifestyle medicine," she'd said at Sarah's last appointment, reviewing blood work that continued to improve year after year. Hiroshi had returned to Tokyo the previous fall, but their friendship had planted something that continued growing. Sarah found herself naturally gravitating toward other people who prioritized rest, who ate slowly, who understood that sustainable change happened in seasons rather than sprints. Her social circle had shifted gradually, with less time spent in environments that celebrated exhaustion and more time with people who valued presence. Jessica had initially been resistant to Sarah's changes, making jokes about her monk phase and pressuring her to return to their old patterns of late-night drinking and weekend recovery cycles. But eventually, she'd become curious rather than defensive, especially after seeing Sarah's sustained energy and genuine contentment. "I keep waiting for you to crash," Jessica had admitted recently. "Like, this can't be real, right? People our age are supposed to be tired and gaining weight and complaining about hangovers." "Maybe that's just what we've been told to expect," Sarah had replied. "But what if aging could feel different?" The question hung between them, full of possibility. On this particular morning, Sarah received a text from her grandmother. "Saw an article about Japanese longevity secrets in my doctor's office. Made me think of you and that bowl. Funny how the world keeps rediscovering what your great-grandmother knew." Sarah smiled, running her finger along the bowl's rim. Such a simple object, yet it had become the center of a completely transformed life. Not because it was magical, but because it represented a different approach to being human in a world designed for burnout. She thought about the version of herself from 3 years ago, anxious, exhausted, constantly at war with her own biology. That woman couldn't have imagined that sustainable change would come not through extreme discipline, but through gentle consistency. Not through fighting her natural needs, but through designing an environment that honored them. As Sarah prepared for another day at work, she felt the deep satisfaction of someone who had found their rhythm. The bowl would be waiting for her at dinner, as it had been for over 1,000 meals now, holding space for nourishment and mindfulness in a culture that celebrated speed and excess. The ceramic remained unchanged, but the woman who held it had been transformed, not through willpower or extreme measures, but through the accumulation of small, wise choices repeated with the patience of someone who finally understood that the body keeps the score, and that score could be one of cooperation rather than conflict. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.